when I talked to you guys on Wednesday, we did know that Derrick Lewis was going to be fighting Daniel Cormier. What I did not know, whether this had, I think this broke while I was recording. Because the second I got done, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to be leaving the listeners without some information. So, Eubanks was pulled out of the fight with the Bullet. The Bullet is now going to be fighting Jedrzejczyk Jasek down the road. I think that's in December. But to remind you guys how that worked, the Bullet was signed to fight Jedrzejczyk Jasek. MSG ends up in a debacle of a mess when John Jones refuses to come in and fight Gustafsson. There's a big panic going on. All of a sudden, you've got Yoel Romero and Gustafsson. I mean, you got all these ideas that are being floated out. But what happened? What happened was you guys didn't like those matches. So the UFC kept going to work till they finally found something that you want, which is Daniel Cormier versus Derrick Lewis. Awesome. Didn't see that one coming. Interesting fight. Not the most compelling matchup. That's fine. But boy, did that satisfy the masses. Great. But what was the fallout from that? Okay. Go back to the girls. Eubanks versus the Bullet was put as the main event, and major pushback came. Okay. So they are now off the card completely. Now, I didn't see that coming. I thought they would go on with it, but just add Daniel and Derrick Lewis. So, got to go back. Got to go back and correct this part. Instead, they scrapped that match completely. Eubanks is now out. It's going to go back to Jedrzejczyk Jasek versus the Bullet. In fairness, that sucks what happened to Eubanks. She did everything right. While so many athletes were saying no, while so many athletes, for whatever reason, were refusing to fight at Madison Square Garden. Hard for me to even say this aloud. I cannot believe somebody would turn down that opportunity. She did everything right. And her dreams were about to be made. All because she did everything right and said yes. But when that match got scrapped, or when that match was no longer needed to headline, instead of keeping it on the card, they've removed Eubanks, and they went back to Jedrzejczyk Jasek versus the Bullet, which was already signed. That got disrupted because Jedrzejczyk Jasek didn't want to fight earlier. Do I say that right? Jedrzejczyk Jasek? I don't. That's a tough one for me. But Joanna didn't want to fight on that date. So I thought she was going to miss her opportunity. No, everything has been made right with the world in terms of that, but not totally with Eubanks. I can't really tell you guys the story without saying that I do feel bad for her. She was told something, right? Joanna was told something too, but what do we know about this sport? We know that things can change, and we know that you have to be adaptable, and we know that if you've got a fight coming up on December 8th, and all of a sudden that same fight, except it's going to be November 3rd, you've got to say yes. She didn't. She had it taken away from her. Rewind all of that. Just pretend none of that happened, because that's where the world we're living in now. Eubanks is now out. The Bullet will fight Jedrzejczyk Jasek, but down the road in December. Oh, my goodness. And then we lose the co-main event. Poirier suffers an injury. At the time that I am recording this, and things could change very quickly, it was an undisclosed injury, so I don't know what it is. We will find out. We will hear more, but it was an undisclosed injury, so Poirier's out, which means the Diaz fight is off. Okay, fine. We still got it. Everything's on pace. Now we got Daniel versus the Black Beast. Very interesting that fight came about and how it came about. And yes, it was largely because of happenstance and because of timing and because they needed somebody. But guys, don't lose the lesson in this. I beg you, don't lose the lesson in this. This is what dreams are made of, and this is how this sport and this industry runs. There is nothing inappropriate or wrong about this. This is consistent with how mixed martial arts, a sport that goes 52 weeks a year, 365 days. There is no season. There is no set schedule like other sports. This is consistent. And a lot of guys have been put in the same spot, and those guys now go down as legends. Don't look any further than the career of Michael Bisping, who was more than willing to say yes on extremely short notice and went in and stopped a world champion and took his title away. People forget that Bisping took that fight. I think it was 8 days' notice. They forget that. They forget it because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how the fight was made or how long you had to train. It is insignificant to it. It always seems to make headlines, but those headlines always go away. And the record books will reflect that Michael Bisping was a champion of the world. I offer you that because this is the way that the sport goes. And yeah, it's a quick turnaround for Derrick Lewis. There's already a storyline there, though, isn't there? Derrick Lewis just came out of a training camp. Derrick Lewis is already going to be in shape. Daniel Cormier is at home thinking that his next fight isn't until January of next year. Is that completely relevant? No. A little bit more will be made of that than is rightfully due. Okay. There is time for a 2-division world champion to spruce himself into shape. I don't see any reason why Daniel Cormier would come in there less than at his best. But you can start to see where things get real interesting. Derrick Lewis showed a propensity to be taken down in his last fight by a guy in Volkan who was not near the wrestler of Daniel Cormier. But the other side of that coin is he got his ass right back up, didn't he? There's also a power there. There's also a different kind of wrestling that Volkan was doing versus what Daniel Cormier does. Look, it's very hard for me to package this up and present to you this in some way other than Daniel Cormier being an overwhelming favorite for this fight. I get it. But Lewis is noticeably bigger. Be good experience for Daniel to get in there with somebody that big. Something he has done before with Bigfoot Silva. Something that he has done before with Roy Nelson. But something that he's going to need to remember how to do if he's going to get in there with Brock Lesnar. There's also a power struggle there, and there's also a different level of wrestling when you're in there with somebody that big. Daniel had a very hard time just going out and out wrestling Roy Nelson. By example, Roy was just such a big guy. I only suggest these things to you because if nothing else, and we don't need to competitively make believe that this is a fantastically hard matchup and that we're likely to get a new champion. I'm not going to play along with some of those things, but there is a need to see this fight. If you want to see Daniel versus Brock and you want to know how he's going to do with size and power, there is a need to see this specific fight and see how does he do with that. And then you can start to gauge and guess how is he going to do with that same size and power, but now Brock's got a national championship in wrestling. I think that it's interesting. I think it's compelling, and I like how it came about. I like the fact that Derrick Lewis took his pants off and now is fighting for a world championship. I like the fact that Derrick Lewis cut a good promo and won a fight at the last second and is now fighting for a world championship. I like the fact that Derrick Lewis told Joe Rogan on the spot less than a week ago, I'm not ready to fight for a world championship, and is now fighting for a world championship. I guess I just like Derrick Lewis. If it was just to come down to it, I must admit to you, I guess I just like Derrick Lewis. And I do trust in the competitor of Derrick Lewis. I think his skills are still forming. In fairness, I think his skills are still forming. I think in the world of mixed martial arts, which we do not have any kind of a belt system other than a gold one that goes to the number one guy, I do not think if we did have a belt system, he would be a black belt in mixed martial arts. But I do think he's a damn good cage fighter. And I do think he's a tough guy with a big heart. And I do think he got a good opportunity here. And I do want to see him stand in that ring with Daniel Cormier because I do want to see that match, and I do want to be able to start to hypothesize and guess how Daniel is going to do with a big, powerful man, which is in his future, should he get by Derrick Lewis, which I expect that he will do quite handily, and have to go in there and deal with Brock, which I think he can also pass with flying colors. But I like the speculation, and so do you guys, and I think that it's fun, and you're going to see this turn. You're going to have very interesting psychology. I imagine when this fight was announced for you guys, you had the same reaction as I did, which is, oh, fun fight. Beats the hell out of anything else you had going on the card. Thanks for giving us that match. I will tune in. I will also bet heavily on Daniel Cormier. I'm sure that was your reaction. I will just share with you, as the weeks go by, the dialogue in your own heads will change. They will win you over. You will start to say, well, you know, Derrick's got a puncher's chance. And, yeah, I remember that time that Anthony Johnson sent Cormier, head over tea kettle. And, if Derrick connects with him, we could see a new champion there. You'll just do this. This is just how human nature works. But, guys, this is fun. You don't need to put yourself in check when you do that. Sit back and enjoy it. Enjoy being a mark for the business. Enjoy that you can mark out. Enjoy that you can fall for the commentary. And enjoy the fact that every single Saturday you can sit down and be compelled by the matchups put in front of you. That is what makes you a fan. That's a good thing.